BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello and welcome to the Scottish Football Podcast. I'm Iona Ballantyne, and as we look ahead to the new season, we're publishing preview episodes for each of the 12 top-flight teams, pocket-sized guides to what to expect and to look out for from each of them. In this one, we're going to be focusing on the team who finished 6th last season, Dundee.
Great run from Rudden. He's picked out Beck, who scores! Wonderful finish from Owen Beck.
McCowan with the chip. Oh, it's wonderful! Beautifully judged by Luke McCowan. And Dundee had the goal.
Oh, it's a Jesse scored! Joe Shaughnessy scored! Oh my goodness me! Unbelievable scenes!
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sports Scotland.
Now joining me for this one, former Dundee midfielder Kevin Thomson and Dundee fan and co-host of the Up With The Bonnets podcast, Paul Gray. Thanks so much both for joining.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
We are talking about Dundee today. There's plenty of positivity. But before we move on, let's have a quick recap of the Dark Blues campaign last time out. Following promotion to the top flight, they started the season with a new manager after Tony Docherty was appointed following Gary Boyer's surprise departure. It began in July with disappointment after defeat to Airdrie led them to going out of the League Cup at the group stage. They were knocked out of the Scottish Cup in the 4th round by Kilmarnock. They went on to finish the league in 6th place on 42 points, an achievement that helped Docherty earn a place on the 3-man shortlist for PFA Manager of the Year. Luke McCowan was their top goal scorer and Player of the Year. Now, there's kind of quite a lot to unpack there. Again, with Scottish football, it's just the way of it, isn't it? I mean, how would you sum up last season, Paul?
Well, I totally forgot about the Airdrie getting punted out there. So, again, we'll just forget it. We'll move on.
That didn't happen.
It didn't happen. But, I mean, overall, I think it was a very good campaign for Dundee, taking into account, obviously, the newly promoted team. You know, Tony Docherty's first gig as the manager. But it's not just that. I mean, obviously, you had to assemble a squad, you know, because you only had 3 players on the books, one of which with a broken leg. So, I mean, it's all fine and well assembling a squad, but to get them playing the way that they did in his particular style, you know, I think it was fantastic. But it could have been better. I think it could have been better. We're all aware of the points that we lost from winning positions, silly penalties we gave away. But to gain top 6, nearly snatch a European slot, what could have been?
How would you sum up the season, Kevin?
It's not like Dundee fans to just want that a wee bit more, is it? Not like being greedy, Paul. It's, listen, I think they were terrific, and I think it's kind of what Paul touched on there. I think the fact that they only had a few players signed, the newly promoted side, everybody normally puts them as the favourites for relegation. They've actually done that before, because the season that I joined, obviously, they just won the championship, and then we finished top 6 the first season as well. So I suppose without kind of putting a dampener on a brilliant season that Tony and the boys had, is can they then bounce again off the back of that? You don't want to then find yourself in a relegation battle. So I think that's the challenge for Dundee. Or if I suppose the way I look at it, freaking outside to in, is that can they maintain being a top 6 team? Can they maintain not bouncing up, bouncing down, bouncing up, bouncing down? And listen, they've got great backers behind the scenes when it comes to the American owners, etc. And I think they've managed to land on their feet with Tony Dock. He's long enough in the tooth. He's obviously had great experience under Del McInnes. Del's doing really well as well, obviously at Kilmarnock. I think it shows you the calibre that Dundee have got in the forefront of the club at the moment, and hopefully that can only stand them in good stead.
Paul, I'm quickly learning that you like to kind of put away the lowlights, forget about them, not talk about them. But what would be your highlights from the season?
I think probably the highlight was obviously the gaining of the top 6. It was as simple as that. And some of the players that Tony managed to bring in as well, you know, like boys like Mo Salah had he's quite a start, but then he just went on and he was just fantastic. And obviously Luke McCowan as well, he was just, I'm amazed. Well, at time of recording, he's still with us. So fingers crossed we can keep him, you know, on the books, because he's a fantastic player. And without him, you know, were kind of struggle a wee bit. But highlight-wise, it would definitely be the 4-0 victory against St Mirren.
Another big chance for Dundee. Dens Park's on its feet. Zach Robinson makes it 4. And Dundee are dancing to all 3 points.
I thought everything just came together that game, and you kind of felt that we were going to keep pushing on. But getting top 6 as the newly promoted team, that is the main highlight, 100%.
Kevin, would you agree with that? A top 6 would be a real highlight for Dundee.
Yeah, I think it's hard to get away with. You get the financial gain off the back of that as well. We obviously having Rangers and Celtic, and I know Hibs obviously missed out in the top 6, and obviously so did Aberdeen, but you get the big gate receipts, you get the big hospitality, so I think a lot of people can appreciate how lucrative that is for teams like Dundee. So listen, there was a dampener with obviously the pitch. They took a lot of battering, kind of party post. I suppose you're going to touch on that, but I think overall the job that Tony Dock done, and listen, it's a brilliant club. I love my time up there. It's a real passionate city for the football, and I think me being a sucker for young players, when you think of boys like Lyle Cameron coming in and doing really well, and Paul touched on Luke McCowan, I'm surprised he still is a Dundee player, but hopefully he is. But I think that shows you where the club's going. I think they've got assets now, which you probably have to go back to your Greg Stewarts, your Scott Bains, my kind of era before for Dundee have really had any viable assets in the market. So it's it can only be fruitful for the club, and it's good to see. And let's hope the pitch is as good as it was when I used to play up at Dens this season.
Every time you mention the pitch, Kevin, I can see Paul.
I like how he used the word dampener as well, just getting that in there.
Planned?
No,
that was planned.
I've not got that in my locker.
Nice work. I mean, for both of you, I'm going to ask you, out of 10, what score would you give Dundee last season, Paul?
I'd probably give us, I think I'd go with an 8, personally. If you listen to the podcast that we do, I'd be 11 out of 10. But I'm we're on this one, so I'll be legitimate. I'll go 8. I mean, it probably would have been a 10 if we'd sneaked into Europe, I think. But I'll stick with an 8.
Kevin, what about you?
I probably would have said a 7 or 8 as well. I think it's hard because listen, it's a brilliant club, but when you think of the big ones, there's always one or two like naturally like have poor seasons and managers come under threat. When you think of kind of Hibs, Hearts, Aberdeen, and Rangers and Celtic, predominantly without kind of going over the top about the old firm as such, but they're predominantly first and second every single year and have been for a period of time. So, Nazy had a brilliant season, obviously at the Jambos, and Hibs obviously lost their manager, Aberdeen lost their manager. So I think when you think Dundee United coming back up as well, which is brilliant. I loved obviously playing in the derby, so it's another big payday for the club. It's another one that the city can look forward to. It's another bragging rights one, but it also brings pressure because you can be having good seasons or a steady season, and you can get disappointments in derbies, and because fans care about them so much, it can be that wee bit of a negativity, and then you just wonder how you bounce back off the back of that. So I just think Paul Hartley having a brilliant reputation, but suffered serious defeats in derbies, and it sometimes dampened his kind of reputation at times, if you know what I mean. So it's another one that will be a challenge for the players, but I'm pretty sure everybody involved in the club will look forward to the big derby days when they come along, and without dampening kind of the 7 or 8 out of 10 that Paul wants to say. Sorry for using that word policy. You shouldn't.
I feel like that might be the word of the day,
is it? It's word of the day.
But I think for me, I just think that if they can get anywhere near what they've done last year and get back into that top 6, I have to say like Tony Dock will have done an unbelievable job. And then the next problem when you think about your Lyle Camerons, your Luke McCowans, they'll then have a real good asset in the hot seat as well, because they'll no doubt there'll be suitors for Tony Dock as well. And I think that's always a challenge, and it's not been negative as any sort, but I think when you get top 6 and the other teams around you try and improve, and then people maybe want your players, some are out of contract, your recruitment has to be key, and it's the expectation, as Paul knows, that the fans want more. They want to try and squeeze into Europe, they want to get into top 6 again, so anything less than that sometimes feels as though you're not doing so good. But I think having the mindset of being an underdog at Dundee is not a bad thing. I think it sets up a good... I like that tag, to be honest. And teams used to come to Dens and find it difficult, and I think if they can create that type of atmosphere and that camaraderie between the fans and the squad, then it puts them in good stead.
Well, let's look ahead to the upcoming campaign. I'm going to ask you both for another score. Paul, on a scale of 1 to 10, how optimistic are you feeling ahead of the new season?
At this present moment in time, I'm about a 7. I'm going to go with this kind of vanilla, beige, whatever. But yeah, I'm going to stick with a 7. But again, I think it just comes down to Tony Dockery's recruitment. and I mean, he does have a ruthless side of him, with players that he's let go, out on loan and just let go last season. So I think there's going to be probably more of that. I think in terms of recruitment, there will be, Tony Dock, like Kevin says, he likes to, to bring in young players, develop them. I think it could be a 9. I'll go with a 9, maybe.
Wow, a 9.
I've got a
Really
good feeling.
positive.
I've always got a good
that,
feeling.
Paul.
We didn't want negative Normans. We want the positivity.
Started at a 7,
that.
up to a 9. What a place to be.
Depending on recruitment.
So we'll take that into consideration. Kevin, where would you score it in terms of optimism?
Listen, I love Paul's optimism, and I suppose I'm an optimist as well. I like to start things positive. I think the fact that they'll have that bounce for last season, there'll be pressure because people see Dundee doing well, Tony Dock doing well, so the prestige of going and playing against Dundee at Dens, people think it's going to be a really hard game, so then they'd raise their kind of edge and that expectation to go to Dens, and that's not saying that if they're struggling a wee bit, but there is teams when they're down there, even though every game's difficult, but you do also end up with that one or two that kind of set themselves a wee bit adrift, and if you're having aspirations of getting in the top 6 or kind of pushing into European spots, and I think you look at the 8 teams and think that we need to be picking up maximum points off them. Maybe not 12, but certainly the lion's share of the 8 points, if you know what I mean, because you think you're picking up 7 or 8 points off the bottom 2 or 3 teams, then that's you halfway there at your 40 points, really. Do you know what I mean? So it's amazing that these things can be, when you isolate the 2 or 3 teams, how important that can be to your season. So it's I'm certainly optimistic. I think they've got a great coach, a great manager at the helm. They've got great support behind the scenes in John Nelms and the Americans, and as an ex-player, I'll be sitting with my toes and fingers crossed that they have a good season.
You got a score, Kevin?
You like these scores just now, aren't you? Putting us under pressure. I'll be a wee bit more conservative as Paul. I think he's bang on with the recruitment. I'll go for a steady Eddie 7 back and see Dundee finishing anywhere between 6th and 8th this season.
A 7 and a 9. I think that's good. Good optimism. I mean, the thing is, you speak about Tony Dock. We know that he's here to stay at Dundee. Paul, you must be delighted with that.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the signings of the summer, to be perfectly honest with you, to keep him on, because there was word, that other teams were sniffing about him, and obviously the rumour mill's, it's going mad at the moment. But come the end of the season, there was, rumours, but to see that in loading up the newspaper and seeing that, it's just fantastic. And I think a lot of people have kind of, we've all took a liking to Tony. His pre and post match interviews are absolutely spot on. He says it how it is. And like I touched on earlier, I think he does have this ruthless side to him, which I absolutely love, But he comes across like a guy you really want to play for, a guy that you want to really bust a gut for. So it's only a good thing having him here. Actually, a great thing having him here. We're positive. Come on.
What is it that he's doing differently, Kevin, that makes him such a success?
I think the modern day game, the modern day player likes clarity. They like it to be in simple terms. I think the fans the same. I think when I coached myself, when I was obviously manager at Kelly, I tried to build up good relationship with the players. Paul talks about players running through brick walls. It might be quite old school, that it might be a wee bit of cliche, but it's amazing what 20 boys that are on side can bring as a powerful kind of organisation, really. And I think if you've got the people skills and the management skills to get the best out of every individual and collectively put them in as a group, then you've got half a chance. Listen, everybody knows tactics, everybody knows the way teams play. Listen, you could find anyone in the street that could tell you that. You could go into social media and find any detail you want to find, but I think the work that they do Monday to Friday preparing for the game, and the camaraderie and the togetherness that they build within a group is so important for teams like Dundee, and Tony seems to have done that really well.
If we look ahead to the season, Paul, what would you like to see change?
For me, it's like I touched on right at the start, the amount of points that we lost from winning positions. I think that needs to be eradicated. I think you need to be a bit more street smart there probably, and like I touched on it earlier, giving away the needless penalties. I think we gave away some 11, 12 penalties or something, and the players looked nervous, to be honest, when teams were going into the box. So I think that needs to be eradicated as well. And I think if we tidy up those elements of our game, then, like it says, that could be the difference between another 10, 12, 15 points. So those wee things, it's just little changes, I think. But I think, again, I'll sound like a broken record. People will be fed up, but it all comes down to the recruitment. I think we need that experience at the back. Obviously, Joe Shaughnessy is out injured. I think that's going to be a lengthy one. We've brought in Clark Robinson, wealth of experience, but I think we could do with another couple in there, to be honest with you.
You still quite like to see the team strengthened quite a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, with the number of players that went, that we had in on loan that have now went back to their parent clubs, I think it's obvious that we're going to be recruiting. I think there'll probably be another 6-7 players potentially coming in. Like I touched on, again, the rumour mill's been rife, but personally, I think the rumour mill's fine. We've heard things. It's happening imminently. It's not materialised. I think we'll only know the players that are signed when the club announce it, or the day that the club are going to be announcing it. But again, I think Tony Docherty will be shrewd. He will unearth some gems, some wee hidden gems there. And it's about, again, with cliche-wise, it's one of the oldest ones that, you need to get that youth and experience mix spot on. So, like Lyle Cameron, your Josh Mulligans and stuff, having, important, older players around them, guiding them, to help them develop. And like it says, Tony Doc's the manager to develop youngsters. So, but I think we could do a wee bit more experience at the back.
I think for Dundee, the loans market will be really important, but I don't think the club should be relying on it. I think the club should be, like what Paul touched on, and I'm sure Tony Doc will have a multiple number of players for the positions that he looks to strengthen. There'll be player one, whichever terminology they use, the A signing, the B signing, the C signing, they'll have backups, etc., etc. There'll be some that are maybe just out with the budget. There'll be some that they could maybe take X to then create a wee bit more money to get Y. These are all the things that you need to try and manipulate within your budget. So I think Tony done that really well last year. I just think for a club like Dundee, the platform, the exposure that the club gets playing in the Premier League, I think it's important to have boys like Lyle Cameron, the Josh Mulligans, the Luke McKimmons, where's the next one's coming through? And then when you're signing these players at the right profile, can the club then go and get money back for them rather than allowing them to go back to parent clubs? And I think that would take Dundee to the next level, because then the revenue would be bigger, the player pool would be bigger, as in the pot of gold that's sitting there for a manager, whether it's Tony, obviously successfully might move on one day, but I think for real stability, if you have assets and you can churn one or two out every other season, then for clubs like Dundee, with how much money there is down south, etc., and obviously in European football, it would be so important moving forward.
Well, let's talk about the opening weekend, Paul, a Dundee derby.
Fantastic. Cannot wait. Genuinely cannot wait. I mean, I know everybody's going down the line of it, it's a great advertisement for Scottish football. Yeah, obviously. But it's great for the city of Dundee as well. The buzz, as soon as it was announced, the buzz was mad on social media, and already the banter started. But it's that week, that build-up in the week. It's not just social media, it's in your work, it's your family, it's your friends. It's brilliant. Don't get me wrong, the 90 minutes will absolutely despise each other. But with Dundee and United fans, we congregate in the same places before and after the game. So again, I'm really looking forward to it. I really, really am. Can't wait. Like I said, I'm really looking forward to them. I think there's one again on the 2nd of January. So that's going to be something, that one. Obviously 2 at Tannadice, 1 at Dens, but I better watch what I say. But yeah, I think we'll get...
What are you going to say? Tell us, Paul.
I think we'll get 9 points from the 3 derbies this season.
Wow. Good positivity.
There's only going to be 3.
I see what you're doing there. But tell me, just in terms of the season ahead, I mean, what constitutes success this season?
Oh, again, I think Kevin kind of touched on it, with the, consolidating and whatnot in the league. And I mean, Tony's more than likely going to come out and say, the usual stuff that, staying in the league is the main priority. But as last season went on, that was the priority. But then, his objectives changed throughout the season. I think it's going to be along the similar lines this year as well. But obviously, he's not going to come out and say top 6 is the priority. But I think top 6 is a priority because, again, like Kevin touched on, it's the revenue. You get, the bigger games, the potential for Europe. So top 6.
What about you, Kevin? What would be success?
I suppose I can say it. I suppose because I'm not involved. I think Tony will come and play it cool and probably like I would do if I was a manager. I think sit in a totally different seat so you can probably be a wee bit more forthcoming as such in your opinion. But I think the narrative will be staying in the league. It will be, can we get in the top 6 again? Can we be really competitive with everybody around about us? Because I think without downplaying Dundee, there'll be another 5 or 6 clubs that'll have the same aspirations. Can they find that last 5th or 6th spot? Can 6th turn into 5th? I always think and it's not down on Dundee United or any other team or Dundee in the league, but I always think one of the big kind of 4 or 5 will have a poor season and one of them will be under pressure. So I think that creates, and then you've got Kilmarnock who want to bounce as well. Had a brilliant season last year. You've got Stephen Robinson who's managed to get in the top 6 2 seasons in the bounce. And I know these teams are really competitive when it comes to budget. So it's when you think of Stephen Robinson, Derek McInnes, obviously Tony Dock, the plates they have to spin, the manoeuvring of their budget and trying to get the right loans players, the one or two that can make that difference, the player that might be better than the level. And we've seen that over the years, that the manager that sometimes has that wee diamond, that one that, listen, it might be an older player, it might be one for a bigger club that's maybe on his way down, it just brings experience, leadership qualities, but it's a challenge for them because they're probably all fighting for the same objective. And that's not downplaying Dundee, but I think if Dundee can finish anywhere between 6th and probably 8th this season, I think they'll have had a solid season. And I think it'll give them good scope to continue to build and build and build.
Now, one other thing that I'm asking everyone is for a general prediction of how you think this season is going to go. Maybe one specific thing that you think will happen, Paul?
There's going to be ups and downs. It's a long season. I mean, this is going to be the cliched sentence of the pod, to be honest with you, the peaks and troughs, whatever cliche you want to use. But one thing's for certain with Dundee, it's never boring. There's going to be something that will happen, and we'll be the media, we'll be the guys that will be in the media just constantly. So
a damn pitch.
Oh yeah, I mean, that's probably one of my main hopes, is that the pitch holds up. But I know the groundsmen have done some incredible work by judging by the videos. So hopefully we didn't get a game called off. But prediction wise, it is going to be a tough season. I cannot see the likes of Aberdeen and Hibs having the same season that they did last season. And I think, with the budgets that they've got, they will strengthen, and they will be wanting to basically rectify, the performances of their last season. It is going to be a tough season. The 3 derbies, you've got Rangers, Celtic, Hibs, Hearts, Dundee and United. I think it will be tighter than last season, because last season, even a win would take you 2-3 places up. I think it's going to be similar lines, but again, maybe an optimistic, I still think Dundee will sneak the top 6.
Kevin, have you got a prediction of how you think the season will go, or one specific thing?
No, I think I agree with Paul. I think it's brilliant to have optimism and kind of excited to see what comes through the door, really, and can there be a new fan's favourite? Can there be scope to build on last year? So I think it's there's far worse positions to be in as a fan of a football club when you have a good season and you finish top 6 and you've got a good manager at the helm and you've got some good young players and some talent within the squad. So I think they're certainly in a good position. The key goes back to that cliche bit that Paul mentioned, the recruitment. Can he get it right? Can he build on next year? Because there is an expectation now. You've got your arch rivals back in the league. Jim Goodwin will want to have a say in that. Paul might think there's 9 points coming to Dens, but he'll want 9 points going to Tannadice. So, and these big games bring extra pressure. It brings excitement. There's the games you want to be involved in as a player. I love them to bits, but it also, there's sometimes always a loser in these games as well. So I think Dundee will have a really good season. I think Tony Dock knows what he's doing. I think he'll back himself against Derek McInnes, Stephen Robinson's, Stuart Kettlewells, like they will against him. But I think Dundee are in a good position, and I think the basis is the squad. We're having these good players. I think Lyle Cameron getting exposure at 21s. Luke McKibben getting linked with big clubs. I didn't see many other teams that are going to be around about Dundee having their players linked with the big clubs. So I think that can only stand in a good stead. And hopefully we'll be doing our podcast and we didn't need to talk about dampening stuff, and we can talk about our top 6 and maybe a wee trip. Maybe I'll get to go as an ex-captain on a European trip with Paul somewhere, and they can take me on his pod and we can talk about amazing pitches that are bowling greens and getting in the top 6.
Ending on the optimism, I love that. What an exciting and very interesting season we've got ahead. Thank you so much, Paul and Kevin, for joining us for this one. Now remember, we'll have preview episodes dedicated to each Premiership team, so to make sure you're across everything you need to know as we head into the new season, subscribe to the Scottish Football Podcast on BBC Sounds and have push notifications turned on your phone settings. We will speak to you next time. Goodbye.
For everything you need to know about your team this season, download the BBC Sport app. All the latest news, goal updates, stats and scores, and insight and analysis. Just select your club to get the biggest stories and best content at your fingertips. What a result. Download the BBC Sport app for everything you need to know about your team this season.